Okay, let's see. So I wanted to make this video so that it is basically an audio file. You can listen to it. And I guess my idea was that it wouldn't be watched, so there's nothing to watch. You can watch it if you want, but I would recommend, like, I don't know, lying down or whatever, listening to it. Okay. Okay, what else can we say? Well, so what can we say, basically? The thing is, I thought that one thing I would like to talk about here is depression, and there's a reason for that. I think that this game is somehow about depression. You can use the word depression, you could use other words maybe. I think depression is descriptive enough for what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be super like diagnosticizing or whatever, but just to talk about like a deep bad feeling, and we kind of know what we mean when we mean depression, right? I think this game has something to do with that because it seemed to have something to do with the cycle between goodness and evil, so to speak, right? Okay, and how can I say that exactly? Well, Conker kind of, something happens to him in this game that I think is kind of central, which is his relationship to Peach. I was going to say, not Peach, Berry collapses in some way. It's the end of his relationship to Berry. And therefore something bad happens. It's a bad fur day. It's a bad hair day. It's an unlucky kind of day. Everything goes wrong. You got up on the wrong side of the bed. It's a day in which things go wrong. That's the main gist of what's happening. Okay, and what is depression, right? It's feeling like really low energy, a mood that goes down, and down and down and down. And I think that there is a way in which in this game we get this duality between a happy world at the beginning. It's not really happy. Everyone's sort of killing each other, but it's sort of a happy, colorful type world in the first half. And then when you reach nighttime, everything's more explicitly dark, scary, like explicitly bad, in the sense that at least in one sense, it's because it is felt to be bad by Conker. Because Conker does a lot of bad stuff in the first half. He kills a lot of people. He tortures a lot of people in some way. He often does it in the name of other people, but still he's collaborating, so to speak, with others to torture and kill. And so he does all that. But then it is in the second half, in the nighttime, where I think he is more explicitly suffering from the consequences of all this negative stuff, or like he finds himself directly in a bad situation that he doesn't like. It's not other characters who are suffering so much as, I mean, other characters are suffering. Almost everyone is suffering in the second half, but he is also suffering in some way. So you could say, I feel as if the gameplay, or the game itself, also implements a certain duality of this kind. The second half of the game is mostly, more or less, but mostly kind of a shooting game. It's a shooter kind of game in the zombie section, it's a shooter in the war section, and it's a shooter in the Matrix section, which I would contend that the Matrix section isn't exactly a part of the second half of the game. It's more like the closing. It's when you get close to the boss. I guess that's because it's more convenient for me to think of it that way for my analysis of the game, but that's how I think of it at the moment. And in any case, it feels as if then the nighttime section is, in terms of gameplay, very different from the first half. It's like a shooter. It's a shooter, completely different controls, completely different kind of gameplay, completely different skill level, I would say. It becomes like a different sort of game. You need a different set of skills as a player to play that second half, I would argue. And I think that's on purpose. I think it just becomes a different game almost. I don't know if it is on purpose, but that's the feeling I get, that nighttime is a scary place, and a scary place needs a scary video game. So it's no longer happy-go-lucky adventure game. Adventure game tropes are sort of compatible for all ages. Even though the game isn't compatible for all ages, the tropes of the first half are mostly the tropes and characteristics of a style of gameplay that's associated to children's games. I mean, that's where the game is born. The game is born from a child-friendly game, Conker's 12 Tales, right? It's a child-friendly game, so it has the tropes of like adventuring, gathering, kind of non-violent, non-scary things by default, transformed into a gruesome kind of spectacle in the first half anyway, but done in this child-friendly parody style, you could say. That's, a silly way of describing it. But anyway, then the second half is more explicitly the type of gameplay that usually wouldn't really be for a child. It's very high, energetic, like requires a lot of, I don't know what you call it, stamina or like stress. It requires a certain stress and attention to detail that's not usually very compatible with child-friendly games where everything's a bit more happy-go-lucky, So I think that that's why the first half and the second half are two separate parts. Nighttime is scary and bad, you could say. And it's scary and bad because bad things are happening. Like, it's a shooting game because there's people to shoot. Like, there's much more explicitly a sense of war in the second half overall, even if it's war against zombies or war against the vampire, war against the minions of the banking place in the Matrix scene. It's more explicitly a war, I think, in this way. It's you're shooting other people and other people are shooting you. So there is like a breakdown of relationship in that kind of sense. Relationships are broken down completely. People are just fighting each other indiscriminately. I mean, there's groups, there's sections, this group is fighting that group kind of thing. The peasants are fighting the vampires. The vampires are kind of fighting back against the peasants, and so on. Okay, so these themes of darkness then, depression. I feel the game is about depression also in the sense of realizing that things weren't as good as you thought somehow. And that maybe the good things that you thought were happening were somehow an illusion. And I don't mean that like in a hopeless way. It's more in the sense that, like, to speak about Barry again for a second, it seems like Conker is convinced that his relationship with Barry is okay. However, his relationship with Barry ends. Of course, right, you could say, well, it ends because she's killed, and if she weren't killed, it wouldn't have ended. But she kind of ends the relationship in a sense. I mean, we don't know what would have happened, but I mean that there is at least an intention on her part of saying this is the last time that this is going to happen this way. And of course, sometimes we even get glimpses of Conker saying that he's going to change. He says that he's going to stop drinking, that he's going to stop being a bad squirrel or whatever. He says that to Jugger in a dreamlike state. You don't know whether he's saying it to Barry in some sense subliminally, or whether he's just saying it to himself in some way in a dream state of some kind. But in any case, we at least get this mention of Conker having this intention to change his behavior, and therefore maybe at some level aware that his behavior is affecting others and his relationships with Barry, I guess specifically, but his relationships negatively in some way. So we get that intention being set by Conker at some level, right? Despite him maybe not doing that further on. We don't know. Then we get Berry also setting an intention to change her relationship with Conker. She says, well, this is not going to continue this way. I don't like being lied to by Conker. I don't like being told that things are going to be one way and then they're not. Right? I don't like that. And I'm going to sort of put an end to it tonight. This is the last time I accept these sorts of excuses, or at least you need a good excuse for me to believe you this time. And so there is also an intention on Berry's side of this relationship can't really continue the way it has been continuing, so far. So far it can't continue in the same way. That intention is also set by Berry. So we get at least two intentions of this changing. But we could also say, well, but this... it seems to me this is the central theme of this game at some level. Because Conker is trying to get back home. Why is he trying to get back home? To get back to Berry. He says that many times. He at least says it at the end of the game, that all he wants to do is go back home and be with Berry. That's his goal throughout the whole game. Yes, he came out of the bar. He was really drunk. And he was trying to get back home so he could go to sleep with Berry, have some time with Berry, just spend time with Berry. That's sort of what he wants, he says, right? So that's kind of the theme of the game. And he never gets back home. It literally is the last time he ever sees Berry, or it's the last time he ever spent any time with Berry. So Berry has this intention to change the relationship. Maybe it wouldn't have happened. Maybe Conker's intention to change the relationship wouldn't have happened. But we get a picture that something has been happening behind the scenes. Conker has been trying to get back home to Berry again and again, we imagine, and he has succeeded. Every time he has succeeded, because we assume this has happened again and again. From what Berry says, it has happened again and again that Conker has gone out to the bar in a way that she wasn't sort of notified of or something, or in a way that, she didn't necessarily agree with or something. Some kind of, something like that happened, some sort of situation like that. And then Conker came back home, presumably, because it has happened again. So, what we're seeing in this game is kind of like the last time that happens. And again, it's a sign that this has happened before. It's happened many other times before, so it's a repetitive structure, so to speak. It's something that has been happening again and again and again, probably in a cyclical kind of way, which is making a promise, maybe. I'm going to assume it's making a promise, not keeping it. Making a promise, not keeping it, making a promise, not keeping it, and Berry having to hear excuses again and again and again that she doesn't think are valuable or that don't really justify the promise not being kept. The promise not being kept is more important here than her excuse that she hears, right? She's not... there seems to be an issue around excuses not being good enough, right? And excuses, we can see what that means, but it could just mean lies, in a sense, pretense. Conker does say, I think she bought that. When he talks to her on the telephone, he's like, I think she bought that lie that I just told her, that actually I can't go back because of X, Y, and Z, because I have to hang out with these people who are going to war. He says, I think she bought that, presumably, I suppose, because, well, maybe he could have gone back home. It wasn't really presumed to be necessary that he stay up late with the war people. He could have gone back home, but I suppose the idea is he kind of sells that idea as if it were really important, right? It's something that he really needs to... It's a war, right? It's an important thing. He needs to stay there, to stay with them before they go to war. That's a way of reading it. Maybe it is important, right? To stay up there with the war people. I don't know. But presumably the idea is that this is something that wasn't communicated to Berry or has happened before, and therefore is part of some kind of a pattern that they have both been enmeshed in some way. I'm going to read it that way, at least for the time being. Okay, a pattern of enmeshment. And I think berries, so the thing I'm reading into this, at least, trying not to judge them too much, just trying to understand what's happening. But trying to see like what's happening. I feel like, yeah, there's a pattern of bad communication, a communication that's based on kind of lies in some sense. Things are not really clearly being said. And the game is from Conker's perspective. He's the protagonist of the game. So I feel that a lot of the troubles that he's having to face are based on his perspective. It's his perspective that's being shown, I would claim, maybe. And so this issue of not communicating well seems to be based around him not communicating well. We don't really know enough about Barry, I would say, in this game. We don't really know about anything about the person Barry to understand what's happening. But we do see Conker kind of being very opportunistic throughout the game. Like, he takes chances when he gets them. And if he can get a better chance out of someone else, he will very quickly kind of backstab whoever he was helping before in order to jump over to a better opportunity later on. So if he gets a better plan than the one he had, he will quickly and easily jump towards that better plan, right? So let's talk a little bit about the role substance plays here, because I think substance plays a role here. Beer is a big aspect of this game. It's on the cover art. You see Conker holding a beer, and it's sort of a recurring theme in the game. And I think it's part of why the game is even happening, right? Conker gets drunk. He gets so drunk he loses his way. He can't get back home, and so because he loses his way, he's lost, and he needs to get back home. You could even say that when Conker wakes up from his drunken sleep and he says, "Oh, it's going to be another one of those days," he says it's going to be another one of those days, and his eyes look all red, and he looks really tired, and he's clearly got like a drunken hangover kind of face, big red veins on his eyes, and so on. And I think what that's trying to indicate, just very clearly, Conker is saying, oh, it's going to be one of those days, meaning I'm going to have a huge hangover, right? Yesterday I got really drunk. Today I'm going to have a really horrible hangover. That's what this day is going to be. It seems as if what it's saying is, this day that's about to happen is going to be a bad day because I'm going to have a hangover. And of course, he does have a hangover, and he does have a bad day, but part of his bad day is bad for other reasons other than the hangover. One of them being that the day concludes with him, like the death of Barry, and him not being able to go back home ever again to his like home where he lived with Barry, to his home with Barry. His home with Barry disappears because Barry disappears, right? And Conker does mention to Jugger that if he changes, like when Jugger is holding him, he says, oh, I'm going to be a new squirrel, I'm going to be a good person, the drink is out, something like that. Like, he acknowledges the fact that maybe drinking is part of the cycle of patterns that have upset, in this case, Jugger, presumably, or whoever his romantic interest is, because he's speaking to like a hypothetical relationship, like romantic interest. He's like, I'm going to change, the drink is out. I mean, it's sort of like that's the idea, I think. So he's sort of acknowledging that there is some issue around drink that maybe has more to do with the substance itself and what it's providing him, is how I'm reading it. because what the substance is doing is it is giving him a huge high, a huge happiness. When he gets drunk, his smile gets huge. He has this huge smile. He's really happy. You get happy, cheerful kind of music when he's drunk. And then when the drunkenness fades away, he's got big red eyes, sad, depressed face. So I think there's this transition from like a high, happy space when he's drunk to a sad space when he's hungover. And the transition between these two spaces seem to be part of what this game is built around, I think. The idea of a good day and a bad day. The idea of a good moment and a bad moment. Or even this sort of weird archetypal kind of mythological idea of day and night. Day as happiness, life, night as death, badness. You know, that sort of idea. So it feels like drink might have a component to it of something that instills a pattern in him that makes him do things that Barry doesn't want, like maybe kind of wanting the happiness of drink over the happiness of being back home, kind of as if the happiness of drink trumps every other happiness, kind of thing. This is an idea that happens in other parts of the game, of course, because the vampire, for example, wants blood at all costs. That's his substance. He wants the death of human beings and to eat their blood at all costs. Well, human beings or squirrels, whoever. He wants the death of people and to feed from their blood. It's a substance he's eating, it seems, almost from not just as a food, like to gain sustenance, but as like an uncontrolled thing that he really can't stop himself from having. He can't stop having more and more of it. And I think this is shown by the fact that he eats so much blood that he grows really fat and dies. Like eating that stuff causes his own death. We get this idea throughout the game of some sort of a substance that is a huge satisfaction to the person who obtains it, and who somehow, if they don't obtain it, they go completely crazy. The bee king who can't have sex with the sunflower and is going crazy. He like needs to have sex with the sunflower. Of course, the panther king needs milk. The milk, if the milk isn't had, there is like a craziness that comes over him, like a complete anger, a complete loss of control. Like he needs to have that milk, because otherwise it seems like he can't practically, function. He needs that milk more than anything in the world. The whole substance of the game is he's going to get his milk back. That's his mission. On his side of the story, the Panther King is trying to get his milk back, so to speak.